So it's exactly 2 years ago that I started at AMS-IX. And before that, I was a lobbyist for 5 years in Brussels and The Hague, and I lobbied for big tech. Talked a lot to politicians, but also civil servants. And basically, they have a different idea of what the internet is. For them, the internet is big tech. The internet is Facebook. The internet is Google. And they have no idea about the plumbing of the internet, the stuff basically that you guys are knowledgeable in. So if they come up with legislation, they unintentionally also hamper the good part of the internet. So they not only regulate big tech, but they also regulate the networks, the people that basically have the hosting or access companies. And this is not always intended. So they have these unintended consequences. Now you can educate these people, but normally they leave after 5 years, 4 years, maybe even sooner. So at AMS-IX we thought, how can we basically bring intelligence knowledge to these people? And how can we do it in such a way that this knowledge is retained? So we then had contact with the Argumentenfabriek, the argument factory, who was sitting over there. And we came up with this idea of making a mind map, where we basically have an issue and we explore the issue in depth. So we basically have a central question. The question has to be very precise. We then have some meetings where we basically discuss this question, and we ask all the participants not to say what their organization thinks, but to come up with arguments in favor of this question or arguments against this question. And this sometimes is very difficult for professional lobbyists, as we saw in some sessions. But normally this works very well. So we did one, I think last year, concerning end-to-end encryption, a topic that was then very relevant in the Netherlands, and unfortunately now is very relevant in Europe. For this event, we also wanted to do a topic. Unfortunately, the Russians started a special military operation, but that gave us a really good topic. One of the things people do not understand or have a different opinion about is regulation on the internet with regard to sanctions. There are a lot of organizations that feel that internet should not be regulated in a sense that sanctions should be applicable to internet access. But you could do that with content. The European Commission did this. There is a sanctions proposal. RT and Sputnik News were blocked. So that meant that hosting companies and access companies in the whole of Europe had basically to block these two news organizations, news quote unquote. And there now also is another sanction that will include 3 additional organizations. So we had 2 sessions for this mind map. Included were a lot of NGOs. There were academic people. There were people from the intelligence. There were people from the government in the Netherlands, and also, of course, the people that basically have to block all the organizations. In the end, we came up with the mind map, which basically lists the arguments in favor, but also all the arguments against. There is a central question. This basically was the question that people needed to study. And then basically we came up with arguments in favor. As you can see, there are arguments in favor and there are a lot of arguments against. When we did this mind map for encryption, there were a lot less arguments in favor and also a lot of arguments against. This mind map can be downloaded from the AMS-IX website, also from ACP, our partner. And basically, we want to use this to start a public debate in the Netherlands and maybe Europe about blocking content, but doing that using a sanctions policy. So it's not a direct a law that basically prohibits organizations to block it, but it's included in a larger law. This is the location where it's available. I would like to thank the Argumentenfabriek, Daan and Simone, and would like to thank ACP, who is our partner in crime in this.
Well, we did promise you a lightning talk, so we do have a couple of minutes for questions if anyone's got any about it. So if I'm to understand it correctly, you sort of force people to argue on both sides?
Correct.
To get the...
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so that's...
And for some people, that's very difficult.
Yeah.
Others, it goes more naturally. I think we were a bit lucky in the sense that when we came up with this idea, we also understood that, for instance, A2B Internet, together with BIT and Freedom Internet, decided to start a court case. So they will challenge basically the way this came about at the European Court of Justice, I think. So Eric knows more about this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe it's giving away secrets, but anyone that's worked in communications or for big organizations is going to know that you always need to know both sides so you can encounter those arguments anyway, right? So it makes sense for you to be thinking from both ends. Doesn't matter what your view is or the outcome you're hoping for. I mean, I get this is a different purpose, but people are used to doing this, right? Well, but I'm sure others find it more difficult than some find it more difficult than others.
For us, it was very important to get both sides of the argument out in the open. So we can start a discussion about, okay, is this really necessary? And if so, what would be the proper legal way to make sure that this can be basically entered into law?
Yeah. Okay, no questions for Alex? Okay, thank you very much, Alex. Brilliant, thanks for the insight.